great game or what? And our special guest today is former Major League catcher Caleb Joseph, who's now an analyst on TV doing the Blue Jay games. Caleb, this is my son Jeff. He has the same terrible voice as me. Say hi.
Hello, Jeff. How you doing? And no, it's a distinct voice and very, very clear that when you hear that voice, we all know who that is.
Caleb, tell us what happened just now. You were a little bit late to the taping of the podcast. What happened?
You can't make this stuff up, Tim. I've never had this happen before. I get to my hotel room, trying to get ready, trying to get prepared, nice and early for this show. And I go to use my key. I put the key up against the door, and nothing's working. I think I've deactivated it with my phone. That happens all the time, right? So I take it downstairs, and I said, "Hey, my key needs to be reactivated." And they said, "Okay, yeah, no problem." And she's figuring out how to reactivate it. She says, "Did you see any lights on the door? Did it flash red or any lights?" And I said, "No, there wasn't any lights." And she goes, "Okay, just wait up there. We're going to send somebody up there." And I thought, what? I got an interview in like 5 or 10 minutes. I need you to reactivate the card. Like, it's just dead. Just reactivate it. That's all I need. Just a reactivation. That's it. The guy comes up and he goes, "Okay, yeah." And he takes apart the door. He takes apart the door. He takes apart the entire door. The door's off the hinges. I'm going, what's going on here? He's doing major surgery on my door, and apparently there's a battery on the part of the door that you have to use your key card. And so he took apart that whole thing. It was like 96 pieces. Looked like a jigsaw puzzle laying out on my, my floor right here. And so anyways, I was able to get back into my hotel just now. But yes, the battery that really gets the key card, started to then unlock the actual door, the battery was not working. And I've never had that happen before. We've had cards all the time, but like the actual battery needed to be replaced, which
Caleb,
created major surgery.
I worry now because you know how everybody gets nervous when you see the air conditioning trucks roll through your neighborhood because all of your houses are built at the same time. So now it's like, oh, that 20-year mark, everyone's getting their AC changed. I bet multiple doors for this poor guy doing surgery. All the batteries are dying.
No, he just told me has done 4 of them today. 4 today. So he's probably on call and not leaving for the next 36 hours. He might be sleeping in
Caleb,
the hotel lobby.
I'm 68 years old. We used to put a key in the door in order to open it up. And now we've gone so far away from the key. Now we have these cards, and now we have to take the door off its hinges so you can get back inside.
Yes. So, Tim, those keys, they had like little holes in them, right? And it would, yeah, I remember those. Amazing. Like Swiss cheese hard, just little random holes.
This is so good. All right. So before we get to the Blue Jays, before we get to the playoffs, I really got to know Caleb Joseph 10 years ago when he caught Jeff in the fanless game in Baltimore in 2015. And just to explain, there was civil unrest in Baltimore. No fans were allowed near the stadium. The only people in there, and there were only a few of us, were the media. And Caleb caught that game. So tell us, because you were great after that, what was that like, being the catcher in a fanless game that was absolutely silent for basically 9 innings?
Yeah, it was absolutely unique at that point. Of course, fast forward a couple years later, and it seems like everyone in the baseball world experienced that with the COVID kind of. But at that moment, that was super unique. And I remember being kind of the first one on the field that day, running out, and it was eerily silent. And there wasn't any music playing. You could hear kind of the honking of horns on streets that were 250 yards away. It was very odd. I wasn't really thinking that cameras were rolling. Like there was no one there, so I just didn't really put 2 and 2 together that they would still be televising the game. And so I started acting like an absolute bozo out there. I run on the field and I start signing fake autographs and like waving to people, trying to keep some sort of normalcy to my routine. We're just so used to doing things pretty much the same every single day. And when you walk out there and there's nobody there, it was eerie, almost like walking into a graveyard, like just a little bit of oddness to it. Like, this just doesn't really seem right. So I was trying to be normal in my own little atmosphere. And apparently some people were actually doing their jobs, which required cameras. So they caught it. And I'm out there just bowing, and waving and doing all this crazy stuff. And I would not have done it if I knew the cameras were there. But it was a cool game to be a part of. I remember Jerry Lane back there. He had a very loud strike call, typically, especially on strike 3. I mean, he'd be back there and he'd go, "Hey!" But in that game, because there was no one there, he was going, "Strike." And it was like a whisper. I could literally hear Gary Thorne up in the booth saying, "Well, Caleb Joseph now 1 for his last 36. And I'm going, "I'm 1 for my last 36. My gosh, like I got to get this together, And you could hear guys on the other side, the White Sox we were playing, like you could hear them talking. And so it was like everyone's voices just in the first inning went from a 9 to about a 1.5. And we were like, "Hey man, good swing, buddy. Way to go. Great job. Good pitch. Great pitch." Like it turned into a kind of like a school library where you tried to be as quiet as possible.
Jeff, I remember Caleb telling me after the game that he's back there catching and he can hear the announcements in the press box. "Attention press. This is the first time since 2012 that the Orioles have scored 6 runs in the first inning." And he says, "Wow, that's really interesting." Like he's catching the game.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it was incredible. You could hear these in-game stats. A couple of times they said, "Now warming in the bullpen, Miguel Gonzalez." We got a guy warming up. Okay, like,
right.
Thanks for the info. But it was hilarious. It was such a unique perspective. And what was funny too is, Jeff Samardzija, he was an animal for a while there and very fierce competitor. Well, he was not having a great game, and it was sort of fun to be able to hear his verbal reactions to being hit a couple times. You can see it in the veins sometimes, but like you can't actually hear it because of the crowd noise. We could hear every word he was saying that day.
Jeff, Chris Davis hit a homer in the first inning, and I'll never forget this, Caleb. It was total silence as a guy ran around the bases after hitting a 420-foot homer. Caleb, you remember that? That must have been the weirdest thing in the world. There should be screaming everywhere. Instead, there was nothing.
Yeah. You remember the Field of Dreams when the players are just kind of walking back through the outfield and their cleats are crunching through the kind of dirt into the corn. It's like, well, that's all we heard when Chris Davis hit the homer of him running around the bases. There was no one cheering. It was just that was it. We just heard him running around the bases, and everyone's so afraid to. They're so afraid to say, "Yeah, great job," because it's echoing. You're like, "Good job, great hit, Chris." It was just, it was so unique. It was so different, and I was.
Well, speaking of homers, Caleb, Dad, are you good on the Fantless game? I don't want to move on. If you
last thing, and then ask the question, Jeff. But Buck Showalter, the funniest man in the world, strangest man, greatest man, love him so much. He told me after the game, I didn't have to pick up the bullpen phone to call down to the bullpen. I just yelled, "Get Britton up!" I mean, that was the kind of day that we were talking about.
So unique, so wild, and we thought that was just totally historic. Right. Little did we know, like 4 years later, or many years later, that was going to be everyone's normal. So
you did it we got there first. Cool, Caleb. You did it before it was cool,
or before it was bad. Go ahead, Jeff.
So speaking of homers, you hit a homer in 5 consecutive games, Caleb, and I was driving home from my radio job to get here and chat with you, and here I am thinking, at what point, back-to-back games, homers, that's awesome. You're like, wow, then you hit the 3rd. And are people talking like, oh, what's going on? 4, 5, like at what point did you feel the pressure? Or was it always just like, oh, this would be cool?
Yeah, oh yeah, I felt the pressure for sure. Probably after the third one. This is probably my greatest major league feat by far. I hit 5 homers in 5 straight games, but they weren't all in the same series. This was like 4 different series as well because I wasn't playing
Right.
every single day. So I think this is one of the coolest feats of all time. I'm really proud of this. Um, I do have to say, the same guy that hit 5 homers in 5 straight games has broken a 125-year record of not securing an RBI in an entire season. So, want to talk about peaks and valleys? We will talk about that season if you want as well. But this is the one I am proud about. But like highs and lows, that was my career. You know, the heartbeat monitor, like that was my career. But this 5 straight games was pretty unbelievable. It started off. I got one off of Paxton when he was with Seattle at Camden Yards, and then we went on a 3-game road trip to Washington, and I got one on the road against Tanner Roark. Then we went to Toronto, and again, I'm playing sporadically. So the game 1, I get one off of Mark Burley. Then game 3, I get one off of Jay Happ. And at that point, like once I got that 4th one, I knew what was going on. Like the 3rd one, I was like, man, I've hit 3 straight, but because it was so many games in between there, it wasn't like a continuous
Right.
story.
It wasn't like,
Does that
oh,
make
here
sense?
we are
It was
another
like,
day at the park and Caleb's going to hit 3 in a row.
yeah, like, it wasn't like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was this took place over like a week and a half, you know? So I don't think I got the credit I really deserve.
And Caleb, the 5th one, by the way, occurred on August the 9th, and Jeffrey Kirkchen's birthday is on August the 9th. So your 5th consecutive game with a homer came on his birthday. So this was in 2014. So Jeff, you were like 23 years old at the time?
2014 was my 21st birthday.
Wow. How about that?
Yes.
And let me tell you, Caleb, on the night
no,
of that homer for you, Dad and I were at Mama Kwan's in the Outer Banks, the diviest bar you've ever seen, and I kept him up till midnight on August the 8th. I know.
Because he was officially 21. So, Caleb, I go to my 21-year-old son and say, Jeff, how about we go get a beer at midnight because it's your 21st birthday? So we get in there and he goes, how about a shot instead? And I'm thinking, oh my God, my son is drinking a shot.
Oh, wow.
I find out later he took more shots than
go.
Kevin Durant, as it turns out later. And this is just unbelievable. All I can drink is beer, and he's had shots at 21. It was absolutely hilarious. So, Caleb, the natural transition was 2016. You've already brought it up. You had 132 at bats and no RBIs. So you're a good major league player. What was that like to go through a season without driving in a run?
Yeah, it was cursed. Cursed is the best way to put it. From the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, I felt like I was under a spell. My wife is able to totally confirm this as well. It was just such a weird year. I had the year before it had a really good season. I had felt like I was maybe going to be in the plans to catch about 110, 120. That's what Buck had told me. And then, Wieters ended up taking the qualifying offer. And when Matt wanted to come back to the Orioles to really kind of make sure he boost his numbers to get more than a 1-year deal, that put me from a starting role right into a severe backup role because Matt was going to try and pump out 125, 130 games behind the plate. So I think I only played like 40, 41 games. I had 120 something at bats during that season, but this was spread out over 6 months. I was playing like once, maybe twice a week. And I did get like 3 or 4 hits with runners in scoring position. And so I think I was sabotaged by my own teammates because I had 3 guys thrown out at home and 1 guy didn't even try and score. And so I'm pretty sure that everyone colluded together against me in the baseball world, even my own teammates, because it had been, 126 years. That's a long time for a record. I think everyone said, okay, it's that guy. It's that backup catcher for the Orioles. He's not getting an RBI. We're all colluding against him. And it's going to happen. But, yeah, no, that was the wildest season. I was trying so hard to get it that I remember like it was yesterday. I was in LA and we're about 5 months into this streak thing. And it's a thing. It's a deal as much as you can make it a deal for a guy that plays once a week. I get bases loaded, nobody out, and I'm facing Bud Norris, a guy that I caught in my rookie year. Like, it's set up perfectly. Bases loaded, on the road, no out. The infield is like halfway to San Diego. That's how far back. All I have to do is hit it all but one place or strike out. Well, I get the 2 strikes, and so because I'm just determined to get this 1 RBI, I am choked up. I mean, my hand is next to the label of the bat. I've got more handle to be seen than barrel, but dadgummit, I am not striking out. And I knew Bud Norris was going to throw me that slider. Like, I knew it, and he throws it, and I'm trying to wait on it, but the anxiety and like the pressure's getting to me, man. So like, I am like 4 feet out in front. I have to hit it anywhere but one place, and that's the pitcher. I hit a dribbler right back to Bud Norris. He picks it up, throws the guy out at home, then doubles me off at first. And that was when I knew, like, this is just not meant to be. Like, this is not meant to be. I could have bunted it down the third baseline, scored a run, bunted it down the first baseline, scored a run. I just had to put it in play anywhere but the pitcher. I hit it right back to the pitcher. That's when I knew this is it. This is just going to be my fate. But you know what? I am going to be remembered forever for it.
Jeff, Caleb mentioned his wife. Tell Caleb the story about what Adam Dunn's wife told him when Adam Dunn had a terrible season. I asked Adam Dunn, I said, did you get any odd advice from anyone when you were really struggling? And what did his wife say, Jeff?
Have you ever considered batting from the other side of the plate?
Yeah. So I assume,
That's
Caleb,
how bad
you didn't get anything like he had to say, honey, no, I bat left-handed. I'm not going to bat right-handed. That's not how it works. But teammates and everyone, they were all in on this, right? I mean, they all recognized you haven't driven in a run, right?
Oh, they were trying so hard. They were tapping me on the back. I mean, they knew. Like, it was just one of those seasons. Like, baseball chose me, and in the moment I hated it, but honestly, it's just part of my story, and I actually sort of like it. I know it sounds really odd, but it's cool to be able to say that, like, I survived a season like that. I just survived. Like, I broke a 126-year record for being terrible, like that, and survived.
But Caleb, cool, this is it's so funny because we were talking about this feat as I was driving home. Dad and I are doing our pre-interview chat, and he said, I guarantee Caleb's probably going to bring it up before I even have a chance to. And you did, clearly. But the difficulty of the game, this speaks to the difficulty of the game. And listening to you and your broadcasting, I always feel like they always say great players don't always make great managers because they just are great, right? Like, it's hard for these great guys because they can't explain it. They just are it, right? But I think the same goes for broadcasters. You're a Major League Baseball player, for goodness sake. And even though you hold this obscure record, you are in and out every single day with the team, working hard, going through the highs and lows of the game. And I think that gives you such great perspective for us watching you as a broadcaster. Would you agree that having this kind of story makes it almost easier for you to understand the struggles of these players?
Oh, no question. I love Bob Uecker and love listening to him. And that's how can you not love that guy? And gift of the gap, the gift of self-incrimination. I would love to be able to follow in a similar footstep, a similar path, because I think relatability with credibility is magic. And when you can bring humor into it and make people, like, that's my style. Obviously, he was probably the best at it. And so that's my style. But being able to poke fun at yourself is important, I think, at times.
Today, October 7th, is the anniversary of the day that Bob Uecker, in full uniform, in batting practice, caught a fly ball in a tuba. He's got a tuba in the outfield, and he caught a fly ball. Bob Uecker, you can't make it up.
What is the Bob Uecker story you've told so many times on the podcast about something about his uniform? Help me here. Or he was an MC of an event, and he opened it up with...
Yeah, Caleb, in 1999, I spoke at the Brewers midwinter banquet, and Bob Euchre was the MC, and he winged the whole thing, and he made everyone howl with laughter, which was his way of making everyone comfortable. They had just traded Jeremy Burnitz, which was a very controversial trade. So
Okay.
Bob is now
Yeah.
trying to tell the fans, hey, look, there are two sides to every story. And he goes, look at my career. He goes, half the people thought I was the worst player they've ever seen, and the other half thought I was a disgrace to the uniform. That's how he described his career, and the entire audience is like, now he has disarmed everyone. Caleb, that's the point. This game is so difficult to play that if you don't have a chuckle about it and with yourself, you can't get through. And you did. You survived 2016.
You had to have those guys in the clubhouse that could
Right.
could bring levity. It is because it's so everyday, and yes, it is the big leagues, and you transition from the minor leagues to the big leagues. You realize just how important everything is, how important winning is, and it just changes. You're way more selfish in the minor leagues. Then you get to the big leagues and you realize, wow, it's really truly all about winning at all cost. And it gets really serious really quick. And to have those guys that can bring levity to remind us we're playing a kid's game, that is incredibly difficult. Those
Listen,
people,
Caleb,
those moments are invaluable.
we usually compliment our guests the episode after, but I've found in 2 years of doing this podcast, some of our best guests aren't, with all due respect to Johnny Bench and Cal Ripken Jr. and the big names, are the Steve Sparks, David Ross, Caleb Joseph, because some people are being introduced to Caleb Joseph more than just the name on the back or, oh, I remember, yeah, he caught a couple years ago. Yeah, because you have such an interesting perspective. Guys like you are what make Major League Baseball great. And you're right, winning at all costs. But damn, 162 games. You start in February, and sometimes you're not ending until, if you're lucky, November. We better have some laughs in the clubhouse, or else this is the worst job ever.
I remember 2020. I was with the Toronto Blue Jays, and the team was heading towards a playoff run. They hadn't made the playoffs in a while, and they weren't really expected to. It was kind of the first full season for Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, even a couple of those younger players. And so they're really starting to take off. But we hit like a 4 or 5 game losing streak. And I was kind of the class clown of the team. I was a taxi squad player that year, so I was active, but only for 3 games. And I was around the team, but not really. I was sort of like a player coach. Well, I get a call from Charlie Montoya, and he's like, hey, we really got to get this team back on track. You know, only 60-game season, 5 or 6 game losing streak feels like a 15-game losing streak. So he said, hey, like, we got to get this team on track. You know, can you do something? And I was like, yeah, I got you. So, you know, team meeting, right? Try not to have any of those because that means it's usually not going well. Team meeting. I think there's maybe 10 or 12 games left, and everything's fine if we just keep moving forward. We just can't go into a 9, 10, 11 game losing streak. So skipper has the meeting. A couple of people say something, and then, you know, of course, here I come. I'll say this. I was barely clothed. I did have a very, I had some socks on. I had a jock strap on, and that might have been it. And I had eye black. And you know, I was ready. So I had batting gloves, helmet. I mean, I was go. And I came in and I gave the guys a little pump up speech, and it was probably centered around one classic movie, Major League, and maybe the Major. Yeah, and I was talking in that, you know, that voice a little bit, and I was like, "All right, guys, we've had a great season today. But look, it's not about losing 5 in a row. We gotta have some fun out there, guys." You know, and I was trying to like canner my inner. I'm losing his name.
Jake,
it's not Dorn. Dorn's Dorn's
right. I know who you're talking about. Yes. Right.
The manager. Goodness, it'll hit me in a second. See, this is what happens when you play catcher for like 10 years, and you're 5 years removed. All those foul balls to the face that feel like Mike Tyson punches, they start scrambling your brains up, and you start forgetting all this stuff. Yes, Lou Brown. So Lou Brown. And, you know, Lou Brown, all right, guys, we won a game yesterday. If we win one day, that's called a winning streak. So, like, I went in there and tried to pump him up. I mean, that was like, that's who I loved to be. That was my goal. And of course, the guys had an absolute blast with it. And I set it up at the very end. We had a Japanese player at the very end, and so I come in and I do the whole thing or whatever, and everybody relax out there. We're having fun, And I said, does anyone have anything else to say?
Right.
Then if you've seen the movie, the Japanese player's like, okay. So I had Shun Yamaguchi, our Japanese player. I showed him the clip beforehand. I said, hey, when I say this, I need you to just say some crazy stuff in Japanese, all right? Very enthusiastic. And he was like, I got you, man. I got you. So, like, I said, is anybody finished? Like, has anybody got anything to say? And Shun Yamaguchi's like, Kusantai Supajama! And the whole crowd, like, the whole clubhouse went nuts. They loved it because they got it. Like, they got the reference. We went out and we beat the Phillies, and everything was fine after that. But just like that little piece of levity, it may or may not have worked. But you try and keep the guys loose, and like laughing and humor alleviates so much
we've
pressure.
Interviewed managers here, Caleb, on the show, and hearing about what some of these guys do, whether it's in spring training or mid-season, just to kind of lighten it up a little bit. Joe Madden comes to mind, Dad, just things he would do in spring training in order to lighten things up, and players too. It's just so important because that community within the clubhouse is everything for a good team. You don't want people to hate each other out there. You're not going to win.
Absolutely. Now, Caleb, you played with your brother. Your brother is what, a couple years younger than you, right? What was that like playing in the big leagues with your brother?
Outstanding. It was a literal dream come true. My parents still rant and rave about it. We were drafted the same day. That little booger was drafted 3 rounds ahead of me. High school draft pick too, I'm like, Yankees, I'm going, oh wow, like that's little brother just totally Tommy topped older brother here. So he was a 4th round draft pick of the Yankees. And then I was a 7th round draft pick out of the Orioles out of college. And he actually made it to the big leagues before I did in 2013. He actually made, you'll love this, Timmy, you will love this. He made Major League history, not sure if it's still intact, but he made Major League history on his debut in Cleveland. He's the first player at that time to make his debut in a doubleheader and play both games. At that point, he was the first player. Most players, as you would think, if they make their debut, they're being called up to pitch or start one of those games, and then maybe they're 26 man, and then they're out. He started both games in his debut, played second base one game, gave Jeter one of the days off, and then the second game he played first base and gave Giambi a day off. And so he played both games, got his first hit off of Trevor Bauer. So anyways, he could hit. He was a really good hitter, and he made it up before me, but then had 6 years in between appearances, bounced around a couple times, and then finally, what was it? Was that 2018 or 17?
Yeah.
And he finally made it back up, and yes, it was in Washington. I'll never forget. It was amazing. Just like, holy crap, like this is actually happening. It's so hard to get 2 brothers in professional baseball, much less in the same league, much less in the same division, much less on the same team. And I just really couldn't believe it was happening. It was great until I think like the 6th or 7th inning, he pinch hit for me. And then I was a little pissed off. I was like, all right, yeah, you can go. Like, I don't like, this is embarrassing now. You're like Buck pinch hit for him. I was like, oh, like this is like, oh.
Yeah, so here he is getting
swallow
drafted
your pride,
ahead of you, making his major league debut ahead of you, and then replacing you as a pitcher.
Yeah. Yeah, humble pie was I was just shoving it in my mouth.
So we have a small family story that Jeffrey reminded me of. My oldest brother, Andy, was the best player maybe ever to play at Catholic University, catcher. My other brother, Matt, was a really good infielder, and he played second base as a freshman. So Andy made a throw to his freshman brother in a game on a steal play, and my brother, Matt, dropped the ball. And the guy was safe at second, even though my cannon-armed oldest brother made a perfect throw. So after the inning, my oldest brother goes to my other brother and says, Matt, if you're going to play at this level, you have to be able to make that play. So Jeffrey asked, did it ever happen to you anywhere along the line where older brother catcher makes a great throw to younger brother at second or short, and something bad happens. Did that ever happen to you?
High school, yes. I can remember it like it was yesterday. High school baseball game. I think it was a this was a little bit of a preview. I vividly remember this was at Brentwood High School, the same high school that
Really?
Robbie Ray went to. Robbie Ray grew up playing a little bit with my brother. They're pretty much the same age. And Brentwood High School, it's a fall ball game. He's playing second base. He was a freshman when I was a senior. And I come up and fire one down there, and he just clanks it. Guy's safe. And I'm telling you, I was ready to wring his neck. The problem is he's a little bit bigger and stronger than me, so I couldn't really actually say anything to him because I was afraid he'd go, "What's that?" and put me in a headlock and so. I kind of gave him the eye, like you should really catch that next time. Please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. But we had a little chat, and I do remember that. Oh, you'll love this. I think. Not sure if this has ever happened before, but I feel like my brother and I were really close many, many years ago, 2005, of making probably baseball world history, if I had to guess. Two brothers, same game, cycle in the same game.
You and your brother hit.
So here's the catch.
Okay.
We almost did it. And it was my fault, of course. Tim, my brother hits for the cycle. Oh, this is in a state championship game as well, a game to get to the state championship. It wasn't some random, this was a big game. My brother hits for the cycle. I have triple, double homer, and I because we run ruled them, I struck out in my last at bat, and I couldn't even get a single. But if it would have happened, I think that might have made baseball
Caleb,
world
no
history
team has
possible.
ever had two players hit for the cycle in the same game. And if it had been brothers, it wouldn't have just broken a baseball record. It would have broken an all-time history of any sport record. Two brothers, and you blew it by punching out.
Let's just count. Yeah, let's count it.
in.
Let's just count it. I mean, it sounds cool.
All right, Caleb,
right?
I always quiz Jeffrey on the show, so maybe we can teach Caleb something here. Jeff, give us 4 players who never hit for the cycle in a major league game.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Jeff,
I know.
we've been over this.
Okay. Hank Aaron never did.
Right.
I don't think Babe Ruth ever did, right?
Babe Ruth never did.
Willie Mays never did.
Never did.
And Barry Bonds? Did Barry Bonds
Barry
do it?
Bonds never hit for the cycle in a major league game.
Yes.
The beauty of the sport, Caleb, right? I mean, we have Benji Molina hit for the cycle. He hit a triple. And Willie Mays never hit for the cycle. How can that possibly be? That is so great. The Joseph brothers almost hit for the cycle in the same game. That would have been the greatest. All right, switching gears a second. Caleb, we love catchers. Again, my oldest brother was a great catcher. I have a strange affinity for catchers. It's the hardest position in the world. Jeff Torborg, former catcher, once said, it's a different breed back there. There's a reason why we're the only ones facing the other way, okay? So just in general terms, Caleb, how much has the position changed since you started catching professionally? It's been an enormous difference. Agreed?
Agreed. Very much so. In not only the implementation of how you're calling pitches, but the stance looks different. The terminology is different. And I do think that there are ways that some of those differences has been good on catchers, and it's changed a lot. They're prioritizing probably different things. Used to be asked a lot of times, what are the most important, or rank the most important pieces of being a catcher? Is it game calling? Is it framing? Is it blocking? Is it throwing? Is it your leadership ability? So you have these 5 kind of tools, and which one is first, which one is last? And I would say that probably over the last 4 or 5 years, some of those rankings have inverted. And that's how they want to do it. And I think Buck Showalter had a great line. It's well, if it doesn't bother them, then why is it bothering me? It still bothers me the way that the game is being played at that position for the most part. But if it's not bothering them, then why do I care about it? I just feel like there's got to be a better important emphasis put on kind of the game calling aspect and not so much about this framing stuff. Framing is a very hot topic that a lot of people want to talk about, and so much of it is dependent on who you draw, who the guy is behind you, who your pitcher is, and who you're facing. If you got a guy that's really locating and you got an umpire back there that is a bit generous, your framing scores are going to go through the roof, and there's just no way to really concretely be able to weave all of those different aspects into it. So it's hard to really like jump onto that framing bandwagon, because one guy that's won one year is 30th the next year, and did he really just forget how to catch? It might look the exact same. So that's a tough aspect of it that I think is different. But the pitch calling too is way different, and that's
Jeff,
why I
2
have the
days
biggest
ago
issues.
at the Rogers Center, Caleb told us a story about catching John Duplantier, right? Was that it? Was that the game? So tell Jeff the
Correct.
story. Tell all the people the story of the day you caught that kid and what happened, and then what happened after the game.
Okay, so I'll make it quick. So John's a very athletic young pitcher, rookie season. He's facing the Dodgers, and it's not going very well. And he is not throwing a lot of strikes. His movements to begin with are very, very big. They're massive. Big sinker, big slider, huge split. And so getting him over the plate was always a challenge. Well, in Arizona, you're kind of given a card where you had a couple recommendations for each batter, for each count, against each pitcher. So it's broken down. So if a guy has 4 pitches, each count might recommend you 2 pitches. I get it. This is very standard across the league, and this is very normal. Now, Duplantier is walking the house. He's barely escaping jams early in the game against the Dodgers, and you just kind of get this sense and this feeling that this is not going to last. He's really having trouble doing this, and I'm sticking to the card, because I'm on a new team, and I want to make sure that I kind of do it correctly. And it's just not going to work. I know it's not going to work. He's one swing away from just giving up the house. He's probably walked 4 or 5 guys in the first 2 innings, giving up 2 runs. It's turning. The train is about to get off the track. So I take the wristband off and I said, look, I have to get him back on track. I have to start calling pitches in different zones to different hitters that are not going to make sense, because I know that I have to get him on track with this pitch, because that sets up this pitch. And if I can get him over the baseball, then that pitch is going to come out. And then we can start to go back to what the card does. And the card is when everything's going right. Well, I'm not right. I have to get him back to right. And this thing doesn't have an asterisk with small print at the bottom that says how to get me back on track. So I'm using my experience and, my intangibles of, hey, he only has a changeup right now. We got to hammer this. I know the card says that changeup is a terrible pitch to, you name it. At that time, maybe it's Bellinger, but this is all we have. And I like his changeup in a bad spot versus the recommendation of a slider, because everything he's throwing is just doing this, and that's about to get hit to the moon. I got to take chances here. Long story short, it ends up going well. He ends up having a really good game. We win the game. I get a call the next day. Hey, come in. Let's have a meeting about this last game. And I think I'm about to be given the keys to the city, statue, I think maybe a new Maserati, because that was probably one of the best games I've ever called. This kid was going down a path. I was able to steer him back on track. We won the game. Modern analytics say wins above replacement are about $6 million per win. I mean, I'm thinking I might get a bonus. I think this is going to be amazing. That's not what happened. I ended up sitting down in a meeting, and they showed me every single time that I went against the recommendation, and it was just a lot of red. It looked like what's the Wheel of Fortune, when they miss it, it was just a bunch of red X's. And so it was not good. And they said, look, we stick to the recs here. We're really playing the numbers game. And, I just said, hey, like, just out of curiosity, did you actually watch the game?
Right.
Did you actually watch the game, or were you just watching what I wasn't calling? Because if you would have watched the game, it would have been very simple to see that this young, inexperienced pitcher against a veteran lineup was getting really close to the edge of blowing this game. And if he blew it, we have to go to the bullpen early. His confidence is shot.
Mhm.
We're trying to win the game, right? You play to win the game. I thought I was going to be given an award. I was actually slapped on the wrist because I didn't stick with the recommendations. That's how the game, and especially the catcher position, has changed. And catchers now know that that's part of the gig, and they're trying to find that balance of satisfying their bosses yet doing right by the players. It is a very difficult position to be in right now.
So what was the story in Reno? Because I don't know it.
So about 4 days after I had that conversation with those guys about Duplantier, I was sent to Reno because they said this is an insubordinate, type of player. We got to get this guy out.
Send him to Reno.
Independently.
That sounds
Get
like
him out
something
of
in a
there.
Yellowstone show, right?
Yeah,
Send him to Reno.
Oh yeah. End up going down there, and I'm not playing that game, but there's a young struggling pitcher that is trying to get back on track. He was a really good pitcher the year before, was pitcher of the year for the organization the year before, and really getting hammered pretty hard in AAA. And so he says, hey, can you catch my bullpen? Granted, at this point, I haven't caught an actual minor league bullpen in about 9 years. I mean, I had about 7 straight years in the big leagues. The fact that I was in Reno was unexpected. I was that guy. I was bitter. I was not happy. And so for a young kid to ask me to catch a bullpen at 2:00 in the afternoon, that was a lot. That was a lot to swallow. I said, okay, fine. I'm going to try and help you out because I like you. I'm going to really help you. I will catch you and give you my opinions and feedback on your bullpen. So we go out there, and as we're walking out, I said, hey, what are you working on today? What are you working on? I had called him before, and I knew where he was at and what he needed to do. And he said, I really want to make sure I have good intensity, and I'm not really going through the motions here. I want to really make sure that I locate and, get my pitches where they need to be. I said, perfect. How about this? How many pitches are you throwing? He said, I'm going to throw 30 pitches. So, okay, great. I'll do all the hard work. I'll do all the counting. You just execute. Let's play a game. Anytime you throw a ball inside my knees at an acceptable height, I'll give you a point. Let's see how many points you can get out of 30. It's just a location game. So he's talking about intensity. I'm talking about location. We should have a pretty good bullpen that feels like a game, right? Okay, here we go. So I get back there. Before I know it, here's 9 different machines going up behind me. There's 3 different machines going up behind him. TrackMan, Rapsodo, and I got wires hanging out of he's hooked up to these wires. There's 9 iPads by the map. And I was like, whoa. I didn't realize I was stepping into, Star Trek here. I thought we were just throwing a bullpen, but so we start the bullpen, and I mean, he's got good intensity right out the gate. It's great. But we end up throwing the bullpen, and I'm over here, I'm over there, and after every pitch, my man's like this, and he lets go of the ball, and the second he lets go of the ball, he's right into the iPad, looking at the numbers, the pitching coach, as soon as he throws the ball, the pitching coach was like, and the iPad was right in front of his face, looking at him. So, he'd be like this, and the point was at the very end of the bullpen, I said he was high fiving, the guy, pitching coach, and everything was all great on his end. He's hitting his numbers, and we walked up together, and I said, hey, how'd you think, how was that? And he goes, oh man, it was so great. It was 2,800 on my spin. I got 12 vert on this, and I had X, Y, Z, element OP, depth and drop. And I'm like, all right, it's good. Great. It's nice. Don't really know what any of that means, but great job, man. I'm glad you feel good about that. And he's like, what did you think? And I said, well, can I be honest with you? And he said, yeah. I said, it's the worst bullpen I've ever caught in my life. And he's like, he was shocked. He said, but I had 2,800 spin on my fastball, and I got 18 inches of break on my slider. And I said, yeah, buddy. I mean, that's all great, but that game we're talking about, out of 30 pitches, you threw 4 in between me. I said, so you had great spin, you had great XY axis break, you had great ride. Well, guess what? In a real game, You gave up a leadoff single. You walked the next 3 guys. You gave up a 3-run homer, and you were out of the game by the 4th inning because you threw 4 strikes, and all 4 strikes that you threw were right down the middle. So I can't catch any more of these bullpens if you think you had the best bullpen of your life, and I think it's the worst because you were chasing numbers. And that was the point of the bull. That's when I knew this is just going down a path. Buck used to say it, man, the game has passed me by. That's when I knew, like, wow, we're literally chasing numbers. My man threw 4 strikes, 4 strikes in the whole bullpen, and he thought it was the best ever. Okay. I need to retire.
Caleb, this is so refreshing because you, as a young guy, still, talking about how the game has changed. It is refreshing. And, my dad always is afraid to talk about it on our podcast too much, this, that, before and after the dead ball era, because we don't want to sound like we're too old on the show. And, as you know, Caleb, my dad covered the game during the dead ball era. So he's been around for a long time. So it's been a little bit different. Now, I have one more question for you, Caleb, and I haven't had a chance to ask any of our catchers this that we've had on the show, but when you go to see your pitcher at the mound, right, has there ever been a moment where almost no baseball is spoken of? I'm talking you go out there and say, you see the girl in the second row? Or, hey, did you hear that new album drop? Or, like, truly, who is the pitcher and what was the interaction that stuck out for you that you can remember?
Yeah, those were a lot of fun. That was, sometimes it just depends on who the player is, and some guys actually need a certain tone or a certain key to get them back on track. And then certain guys, honestly, when it's just not going, and you know that you're coming out there to breathe the guy in the bullpen to get to give him some time, and everyone knows what's going on. I'm not about to walk out there and be like, all right, man, we're just a pitch away. Like, that's when I would go out there and just be like, that burger that I had for lunch, that's not settling very well. Something's going to happen in the next 10 minutes that's going to really upset the umpire. Like this, I don't know, and just anything to just throw off. I've asked some pretty pointed questions to some players that I cannot ask on this format. Very, very, very personal questions that totally throw them out of the moment. When's the last time you had a bowel movement and what color was it? That stuff like that just if you go so far out of the realm of what's going on, it changes their perspective.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, some of those were really, really good. But you're right. Yeah, you're always looking for something as a catcher, depending on the situation. That's the beauty of our position, is because we spend so much time with these guys. You learn how they are motivated. You learn how they can be kind of patted on the back, and you get to almost be like a therapist at times, and you can really create some fun memories.
Johnny Bench said he said the same thing during a game during the Big Red Machine. He would ask the same question about bowel movement. So it's just unbelievable that you two. No. I was too scared to ask him that question, Caleb. Too scared.
Right. So Caleb, you mentioned Buck Showalter twice. We had Buck on last year. Of course, we laughed and we learned for 45 minutes. It was ridiculous. Buck once asked me when we were teammates at ESPN, he would just look at me out of the blue and said, "You ever seen a great player who has a lot of freckles?" That was the question that Buck asked me. I'm thinking I've never been asked this question in my life. He asked me once, do you ever notice that Dominican infielders have trouble with pop-ups? And I said, no, I had no idea that Dominican infielders had trouble, but he can. So what was it like? What was it like playing for Buck, especially when you were a young catcher and you are the catcher for a guy who's a maniacal genius in the dugout?
Okay, I'll give you a debut story really quickly. So I go in, we're at the Trop, go into the Trop, set my bags down in the manager's office, and he shakes my hand. Hey, congratulations, welcome. Just let you know, if you can't run the game on defense as a catcher and run our staff, I don't care if you get a single hit for a month. You better run the staff and run the game plan or you're going back. Message accepted. I understand. Yes, Skip, I'll be there. Get dressed. First game. First day I'm there. First game. We're playing at the Trop, the Rays. It is first and third, okay? And the 8th or 9th innings, late in the game. So the Rays, this was back, many years ago. They could really do a bunch of really unique stuff 10, 12 years ago. I had to come out in the 9th. It's first game, first day I'm there. I'm already just not even realizing what's going on. Everything's moving so quickly. But looks over. And remember, when you get to the big leagues as a catcher, you've got not so much anymore because of the transmitter stuff. But like when you first got there as a catcher, you had to know so many different sign sequences. It's not the same in spring training. And like you're learning on the spot. Like, hey, Buck is like, hey, here's my 9 signs that you have to memorize. Oh, and we're talking about it at 6:52, and the game's at 7, and it's like nothing's even registering because I'm trying not to have a bowel movement in my pants. It's my first game. I'm like I'm floating. Like I don't even know what's going on. He's talking about this sign, this. So it's the 8th inning, and the game is like on the line, and I look over, and he's like first and third giving me a steal sign and a bunt coverage. I got not one sign to remember. He's giving me 2 signs in one play to remember. And he's doing it. Hey, bunt play, double steal. And I was like, okay, no idea what to do. No idea. So I started making stuff up. I just started grabbing and pointing where I thought he was pointing to. Got it completely wrong. He had to, I'd say, hey, here we go. And I turned back around and Buck goes, and that's when I literally heard the voice in my head, like, if you don't get this right, you're going to be going to Norfolk in about 6 hours as soon as it's over. So I like locked it back in, and I was like, oh, crap, I think I actually reversed them last time. And so I ended up getting it right. But I would never forget, like, after that game, we win, and I'm on cloud 9, and everything's good. And, like, I'm walking back with my stuff, and he grabs me. I come in the office, and he says, hey, like, great game, great debut. You cannot mess those signs up. Like that's very important. And I knew how important it was to our team, to playing a certain way. But as a rookie, right out the gate, like you knew you were playing for Buck Showalter. Like you weren't playing for. This is a very regimented, serious business, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I love playing that way. I love the structure of it. I love the discipline and the accountability, and I thrived. I felt like in that environment after day one, once I kind of got settled in. But he was the type of manager that when you get to the big leagues as a rookie, you think you know the game because you've been playing it for 20 years. You sit next to him in a dugout, and you realize how little you actually know about the game that you've watched for your whole life. And you're like, there's not really much I can learn. It's just I've seen so many baseball games. You sit next to him for one game. He sees so much of the intangibles, so much of the gray, points it out. And then you can't unsee the game a certain way when you play baseball with Buck or around Buck. And I was just so privileged to be under his mentorship and managerial efforts for many years. And it was just so thrilled and honored because I look at the game differently, and I feel like some of my broadcasting skills are because of what he taught me and how he taught me to watch the game.
Right, so good. Caleb, we got to let you go, but we can't let you go until we at least talk a little bit about the 2025 postseason, which has been fabulous. Trey Savage pitched the other day. He gave up no hits and struck out 11 in 5 1/3 innings in his 4th major league start, 14 innings in his career. And we've asked this question to all sorts of people. How does Caleb Joseph explain that a 22-year-old can go out there, not just with that kind of stuff, but have a presence about him like he's Gaylord Perry going out there and absolutely unflappable and poised beyond words? How do we explain that?
Yeah, I still trying to figure it out. He is obviously different. And you talk about the intangibles and being wise beyond his years. I was really unsure how this whole 3 weeks was going to come out and turn out just because you don't know the player. Well, obviously Toronto knows his makeup, and this shows how important a couple things are. Makeup is just vital to your success if you don't have experiences. Now, of course, the more experiences you get, the more you just start to kind of lean into that, and you can use that. But I think another thing too that really helps is his angle, guys, is so difficult. It's so much higher and over the top that it gives him a bit of a secret weapon. It really does. And when you talk about players nowadays, they're constantly talking about being on plane with their swing. So, the pitch is coming in at an angle because the pitcher is throwing off a mound, obviously. Most guys are talking about getting on plane with their swing early. I was taught to chop wood. So I have basically a chop wood motion here. Well, if the ball's coming in this way and I'm being told to chop wood, I see one intersecting point right there. You see what I'm saying? Which the hitting zone is super short. And it's like, no wonder I hit 220 because I'm swinging down, the ball's coming down, and I got 2 inches to hit it. Like, where? Like, no wonder. I mean, they said, Ted Williams said a slight uppercut. I think the only reason he meant that is because, if the ball, you're trying to match the plane. So, I mean, instead of swinging down, you're just trying to match the plane of the ball. If it's higher, so the thing about Savage is most guys' angle in from home to the plate is kind of right here. Savage, because of his height and because of how tall he is, that angle is so steep. It's almost like he's standing on a ladder throwing straight down. So it's so uniquely different that the down angle part of it is so unique. Well, so many players now are talking about getting on plane with their swing, and it's normally here, but you get Savage that's like this, that feels like straight up and down movement. To get on plane, you got to feel like you're swinging straight up. But swing straight up, now the launch angle is all messed up, so you don't want to be on plane and hitting fly balls to center field. So what happens is, I think he's got a secret weapon advantage because of that down angle that guys have to end up swinging more differently than normal because the angle is so different. Does that make sense at all?
Yes, it makes sense. What doesn't make sense, Caleb, is Alejandro Kirk, who looks like that. Now, this kid is a really good player. I want you to tell us how it is that a guy who's short and stocky and doesn't even look like a baseball player, his feet even point out kind of like a 10-2 on the clock. And he's not just good, he's really good. His bat to ball skills are great. His hands behind the plate are elite. Please tell us how beautiful it is that this game is open to all shapes and sizes.
It is, Tim, and I love the fact that people like that can make a living and really take a country by heart. Unless you lose your roster spot for that type of player, which I did. DFA for Alejandro Kirk. So, one of those things, Tim. 2020, I was DFA'd for Kirk. I lost my roster spot. And you know what? I'm still waiting for Canada to thank me for giving my spot to this guy. If I wouldn't have so unselfishly let go of my roster spot, they're probably not in the position they're in. So, I'm still waiting for some sort of prize or something. But he at the time, we were around each other. At the time, he very, very quiet, and rightfully so. I think he was maybe 19, 20 years old, very little English. He's worked really hard to get better at his English. His game calling, game planning has just continued to grow. Tim, I knew right out the gate when I saw him swing, there's just a different feel to a really good hitter's swing and a path. And let me tell you one thing that's for certain. Sometimes when you see certain players swing, it appears as if they have a slow swing. Manny Machado was probably the first guy that I noticed this with, that when you watch him swing, it really doesn't look that fast. Like a Mike Trout had this really fast looking, so it looks fast. Machado doesn't. And the reason why is because he gets on plane, like we were just talking about, so early. So he's on plane way back here in the swing, and then it's a rotation through the zone. And so that bat is up here, and it starts on plane, and then just starts to rotate all the way through the zone. And the rotation looks slow, but because his hands are so tight to his body, because he is on plane, it's actually moving exponentially quicker than somebody who's short to it, short to it and long through it. That little V type of action is actually a little bit less powerful and stable and quicker than a tight turn in here, like a ballerina spinning. And that's what Kirk does. Kirk is that guy. Kirk doesn't look the part. He doesn't look like he's going to be any good, but the second he makes his first move, his back shoulder slots down and he's on plane right there, and then he just starts to rotate. And the fact that he can stay so flat through the zone on pitches that are high, on pitches that are low, he hits the back of the ball so often. It's really impressive. And he doesn't chase. He's got this crazy what's the word? Skill set in that he doesn't chase, yet when he swings, he barrels it up. So it's a very unique combo, and it's been really fun to watch him. And look, only baseball can you have Judge, Altuve, can you have a Stanton, Kirk type that all four of those guys are uniquely and equally valuable to their teams, respectively.
Caleb, we could keep you for 3 more hours, but we got to go because you got to go. We took an hour of your time today. We can't thank you enough. And Jeff, at least he got in the door, right?
Right, he got in the door, but it took us 55 minutes to talk about the Blue Jays, and that's the glory of this interview, Caleb. We're not cutting a moment from it because you were freaking-tastic, and I know what a good guy you are now, so I'm sure you're going to go help the guy fixing the doors in the hallway because he's got about 100 more to do today.
I'll volunteer my time, and I can really turn that screwdriver pretty quick for him. So we'll see.
And Jeff, these are my favorite sentences. Caleb, I'll see you at the ballpark tonight.
Oh.
That's when you know you got it made, is when you're going to a playoff game and you're going to see a bunch of major leaguers and former major leaguers. That's where we learn. And today, Jeff, we did exactly what this podcast is about. We laughed and we learned. That's what we're trying to do here. Caleb, thank you so much. It was a blast. It was tremendous.